BIC podcast number 112. We're going to talk about the playoff games that happened this weekend. We're going to discuss Eric's new war against the city of Detroit. Who knew? Man of peace. I can't relate, but nonetheless, we'll talk about it. We'll talk a little bit about Series 1 baseball because Brandon brought up some interesting things that we even want to discuss related to that. We'll have our silly card of the week. And then in the course of discussing the football games, we will actually speak on the card implications because we occasionally will touch on the subject of sports cards. So we figure we may as well bring a little bit of an angle onto it. And there may be one or two other little things that I'll sprinkle in there. That and more on this episode of the BIC podcast. Yes, under the gazing, watchful eye of Brett Favre, we are here once again. And once again, a man of not peace, Eric is here. And we'll get into, like I said, this distasteful attempts at undermining the people of Detroit. It's very strange that it would come to this, but nonetheless it has. So we're going to get into a couple of things. Let me start off then with the silly card of the week here, so we can begin with that. And actually, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to audible for myself. I actually had a card that I was going to use as a silly card of the week, and I changed my mind because I have a more worthy candidate, but we'll get to that in a second. So what I'll do is I'll share first the results of last week. So last week we had some good participation. We appreciate it. We do need to bump that up though. You got to remember, the only valid voting in this world is in the silly card of the week. So be sure to participate. Vote early and vote often. But nonetheless, the Carl Yastrzemski, the Carl Yaz, question mark, with questionable spelling, got 18% of the popular vote. The Jim Brown with, it does have 4 zeros in a BGS4, subgrades. Maybe that one needed a little more explanation, but nonetheless, that one got 32% of the popular vote. And the last one, It's Dave from Bougie Eric, received 50% of the popular vote. So it did clear the 50% threshold, and it is the winner for this past week's silly card of the week. So congratulations, Eric. You were not garbage for 1 week.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. I will do everything I can to maintain the high standards that you've set upon me. And let's see if we can go another week in a row here.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share both of yours, and then I'll finish off with mine. So we're going to begin, Eric. I believe this first one is yours. So we're going to put it on the screen, and then I'm going to let you explain yourself. So let's go in here and open this up. I'm going to grab this window, and I'm going to share it. Got some ping pong. What do you want to say about this?
Well, here we are. We got Hall of Famer Jerome Iginla, former Boston Bruin great. This is a hockey card. Now, you may ask, where is the Hockeys on the Hockeys card? It is nowhere to be seen. What you have is Jerome playing some ping pong. And he's in his socks and shorts and t-shirt, and he looks like the world's ping pong champ, and that this card is of a world champion ping pong player. Nowhere on the front of this card is there anything that would educate a novice that this is a hockey card.
Well, aside from, so just to add a little context here, the card in question is 97-98 Collector's Choice. 97-98 Upper Deck Collector's Choice, which was literally, Collector's Choice was literally Upper Deck's kid brand back in the day. That was their one that they included in there. And they had a lot of different candid photos. If you guys go and check back in the late 90s, 97-98 was a very good year for it because they had large photographs on there. Very basic design. You can see it's just a name and team across the top. The position is just on the side, and then the bottom just says Collector's Choice. So they've got a big space to put a big photo on there. They do have a lot of candid shots on this. I'm surprised though, Eric, that you were not enamored with the fact that Jerome clearly doesn't skip leg day.
I was actually going to mention, do y'all see how like flexed up he is to hit a ping pong ball?
Yeah.
And I can only assume he has gotten those leg muscles from those stationary bikes that are behind him.
I thought it was ping pong.
We all know.
I honestly, I thought it was a combination of ping pong. If he is going to do something bicycle related, unlike you and your pansy sport, he fights in real cyclocross.
I
He
mean,
killed men. Killed
he
them.
might. Maybe he does a jump serve.
Right, maybe he does.
Maybe
Maybe he does a lot of jump rope, Eric. How do you know?
He might, but I'm just gonna go with since there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stationary bikes back there. I'm gonna go with all of his physical features come from cycling.
All I gotta say is all unused. That's what I'm noticing. I'm seeing a lot of ping pong. All right, Brandon, this one's yours. We got Raymond.
Yeah. I just
Does
thought
everybody
this one
love
was
Raymond,
fitting for
Brandon?
silly, obnoxious, whatever that we name this segment. What could have been, right? What could have been. You may notice the photo. It was very, very popular, very highly printed, very sought after player who did some very bad things. And at a very young age, didn't make it very far in the league, and is currently in another country, I believe, under arrest. But poor Raymond here, because the card was already silly enough, he has to endure the fact that he was placed Photoshop on Wander Franco's body for the rest of his mascot life. And to be quite honest, even if I was a Rays fan, I don't know that I would want this card, knowing the background of the player that was used to make the image. So I just thought it was pretty fitting.
Yep. It appears that not everyone loves Raymond in this case. Most unfortunate. Most unfortunate. So I actually had one idea for what I wanted to do for my silly card, but I did call an audible because I did receive some mail this week. I received it earlier today. I did some processing, some sorting. I already recorded the pickups for the wrestling channel. That is included. Links in the description. But there was a card. There were a few cards that were of the sports variety, the sportifs. And one of them, I think, is appropriate, and I think I may have to include for the silly card of the week this week. And all I have to say is, tractor!
Oh boy.
He got the tractor.
That's all I wanted. And by the way, for people that are like, that's not a tractor, that's a lot more. Look, I don't care. Number one, I don't care. Number two, it says tractor right on the damn label. It says tractor jets. We're going with it. Let's go. Tractor Favre.
That is a
Seriously,
long
people.
tractor.
Seriously, people. Seriously. Tractor Favre. Come on.
On the Jets at that.
Yeah. That's him trying to escape prosecution for his photography faux pas, driving the tractor as quickly as he can to the Vikings camp.
And that he did. He did make it to Minnesota. And he had himself a good season there. You know, it didn't work out in the end, but he had himself a good season.
He was up for going into the end of that season. He was probably leading the way in MVP votes.
He was a candidate for sure. Kind of a fun throwback, but yeah. So Brandon and I inadvertently ended up with two different, tops variants because that was a tops card from then as well. It does beg the question. Once I heard that thing existed, it was a fait accompli. There was going to be a day that I was going to get the goddamn tractor card. It was happening. I was going to get it. It was just a matter of when. And they did number those. This one is numbered to 500. So
they numbered
I don't know.
On a variation.
They numbered it.
That's unusual.
Yeah, I don't know why, but they numbered it to 500. There it is. So I can't tell you anything more. So it is from 2008 Topps Football. So they have a variant. Why somebody decided that Brett Favre needed to be on a tractor, I don't know. I got nothing. I just knew as soon as I saw it, I had to have it.
I think it has to do with the fact that he's a hillbilly.
Who can say?
Nonetheless, Bobby Boucher, he rides a tractor to practice.
Yes, and there is a Packer version as well. For the same series, there is a Packer version of this. So I will get that. But I got the Jets one, and then my next goal will be to get the Packer version of it to complement it, so I can have the full set.
Yes.
So Hashtag goals. Hashtag goals. So that's our silly card of the week. We will include a link in the description and everything, so you guys can check that out. It will be a community post, and feel free to vote early and vote often. And we thank AMG Collectibles and the AMGcollectibles.ca and the AMG Collectibles YouTube channel for their support of Silly Card of the Week and this podcast. There will be a podcast episode later on this week. This one drops on Tuesday. That podcast episode will drop on the Wednesday with whatever new products came in the store. I did get a list, so I'm going to review it. Also, Sherry was at the CSC show with Brad and a couple of other folks, so probably we'll touch on that, most likely during the live stream. So by the time this one drops on the Tuesday, there will be a live stream later on in the day. And I think we'll probably talk about the CSC show a little bit so that they can add a little bit, because Sherry was able to look around a little bit for herself and find some cards. So we've got at least a couple of stories we can share from that, and anything else they want to chat about or whatever the chat wants to talk about. So thanks to AMG for supporting the channel and the podcast.
And that'll be at 5:15 tomorrow night.
5:15 Eastern is generally the time that we go for. You know, we're usually within right around that time, so we usually start right on time. So if your afternoon drive, if for some reason you're at work and you're in your afternoon drive after work, well, right on time. You can tune in and listen to the hijinks, and we'll see if they've got anything planned. So we'll definitely have that going on the channel, so thanks to them for supporting. All right, so we're going to talk about a couple of things here. Let's start off with my personal favorite. It is the most wonderful time of the year. It is the YouTube Sports Card Hall of Fame, Eric's favorite all-time greatest, not real Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
It is truly the best.
Truly the best.
And it's we can only hope. I cross my fingers that people will realize that Tom Brady does have a YouTube channel and that he did show sports memorabilia on it. So honestly, people, vote your conscience. Do what must be done. I'm just saying. So anyway, part of the reason I like to mention is, number one, I enjoy making fun of it, and number two, the channel does get some votes. So, you know, I'll repeat what I said before. I'll repeat my previous utterance. We appreciate the sentiment for the folks that sincerely include the channel. In general terms, I don't want anything to do with that crap. However, I'm also not going to tell you what to do. You do whatever you want to do. I will say, though, just speaking in my observations initially. So now I will separate it from the channel and discuss my general observations. So far, it seems to be playing out from the ballots that I've been able to watch. It looks like it's starting to play out the way that I expected it to. And I'll kind of reiterate what my thoughts were. And this year is when I was saying to Brandon just before we got started, this has been trending this way for a while, but this year is the first year that I think it's going to fully coalesce and actually all come together at the same time. And I'll explain why. One of the observations that I've had the last year and change or so, higher preponderance and a higher, there's been a wave of vintage baseball card channels, which in itself is completely fine. You know, whatever floats your boat. But because of that, a lot of them started up around the same time. So that's why, hence the wave. And because a lot of them have been able to now clear the 1 year marker, they have now become quite the prominent voting block. And we'll see if it plays out fully in the end. It's just started, but it feels like quite a number of them are now eligible to cast ballots, because the only qualifications that you have a sports card related channel and that you've been posting about said sports cards for a minimum of 1 year. That makes you eligible to cast a ballot. And in order to be eligible to be a candidate, you must be doing the same thing, but for that one, you have to be at least 3 years. So at the same time that some channels have now hit their 3rd year to qualify as a candidate, a bunch of those channels have hit their 1 year to qualify as a voter. So now you've got this block of new voters that were not eligible last time, and a bunch of new candidates that were not eligible last time. And it's kind of coalescing. And as I say, I'm calling it a voting block because it tends to be these channels kind of follow each other. So when you see live streams, and I follow a lot of these channels, so I kind of can see it from around it as well. When they do a live stream, a bunch of them are on there participating, engaging in it. Well, engagement breeds engagement, more engagement breeds more engagement. So you've got this block of, an audience that kind of follows around. Well, the portions of the audience that also have channels that have hit that 1 year mark also become eligible voters. So I have a feeling there's going to be a couple of brand new channels that are going to rocket right to the top of the voting counts that were not eligible a year ago. And I think that's going to have a big impact on the end result of this year's thing. That's my early prediction, just based on my observations.
I guess I'm gonna need to get back into doing videos again. I don't think anybody knows I have a channel anymore, but also I'm kind of scared to do videos anymore because it seems like every time I do a video, I drop like 20 subscribers somehow. So
that is
going in the wrong direction.
Excuse me. That is because you, sir, are a
Oh well, that's okay. That's okay. I mean, am I going to be the Pete Rose or the Barry Bonds of the Hall of Fame?
I believe you
Hey,
will be.
I mean, but no, seriously, I used to get nominated and stuff like that, which I'm kind of like Carlos. You know, I get it. Some people, it's their dream, their passion, their goal of their channel to be accepted into the the dome of the Hall of Fame.
Yes, the prestigious. And look, none of us here on this screen would ever dream of pandering to this vintage contingent.
Oh no, I don't know nothing. Like hell, I talked about how vintage is going the wrong way and how I have sold vintage cards. But the truth is, if you actually came into this room out of sight, Bobby, by the way, always criticizes me on my shelves. I'm getting there. You see the stuff. I'm filling the shelves up slowly but surely. But some of my best cards that are never seen on camera are actually right here in front of me because I enjoy seeing them. Back there, I can't really look at them. So this case right over here has about 10 Jackie Robinson cards in it and various other vintage. But nobody sees that because then I would have to take them out, you know, whatever. I have the little rack behind my camera, but that's only when I'm using that camera that anybody sees those because I'll change them out every so often. But I do vintage. I don't niche myself into talking about it and oohing and eyeing over it every video, but I appreciate it. I have some. Um, but yeah, it's like I think Carlos is right. Like there, and this isn't just in sports cards. I think it's in many categories on YouTube.
Yeah.
You get pods. You get pods of people who group together, and unfortunately, with this, you know, if it means something to you, most of the group for the Hall of Fame is inside of that pod. So it's like you have to be welcomed into the committee to be a part and accepted of it. So, and I'm not saying anything bad. Like I've met a lot of the guys that are in it or participate in it. But overall, if it's going to be generalized as YouTube Sports Card Hall of Fame, it should be more and all inclusive of the entire general consensus. I'm going to tell you right now, if there was a sole just specific hockey channel out there, I don't think they'd ever get in because like really none of those guys would pay attention to them. That's not their thing, right? How many times do you see people showing the Parkhurst, you know, hockey cards and stuff or anything like that in comparison to some Gaudies and stuff? So um, I just feel it's something fun and it's talked about every year and it's laughed at or drama ridden, you know, built up or whatever.
Well, listen, I'm crossing my fingers. I'm hoping for a little bit of drama this year. Right now, so far, or like early returns, so far everybody's well behaved. But as I said, I want to make sure. So Brandon was talking about his vintage bona fides, and I was just saying,
Yeah,
uh, I have the other ones are upstairs. I already filed them away.
wait. I can play.
Yeah, there you go. And
My
I was going to
oldest.
say, like, look, we got covered. You know, you got your vintage bona fides. You know, I've got Booby Orr.
Hey, all I
Exciting.
gotta say today
And
was
Eric's
inauguration
old,
day.
really old.
Today was all inauguration day, and you know, you see it right on the screen. All I'm gonna say for all of you voters out there, you nominators and everything, let's make a run. Let's do it. Let's go, Brandon.
Yeah, I see what you did there.
Wow.
So this
Just
is
wow.
my 2 cents. I have completely done a 180. I have changed my mind completely. I am all in on this. Now, I want to first say this is Carlos's channel. He is
It
the
is.
driving force behind it.
I am.
And I know that if we win and become Hall of Famers, I will only be Hall of Fame adjacent, and that's enough for
Oh
me.
yes. Oh yes.
Okay.
Like Bobby
And
Orr.
I now see this as two things. One, we will be the redheaded stepchild of the Hall of Fame, the true
Oh, Eric,
Hall of
I take it a step further. Outside of Bob Lewis, because Bob Lewis is a discussion
Bob Lewis
point that
is
can be
awesome.
had another day. Outside of Bob Lewis, which is an entire different, I could spend 6 hours discussing the Bob Lewis problem, but I will not tonight. Tonight I will spare you. But
Right.
outside of Bob Lewis, this channel would truly be a mockery and a blight
Yes.
upon this made-up institution.
Yes.
If it was real, they'd be like, "Fuck this place" and burn it to the ground. That's what
Right.
happened.
I know there's patches, but is there any changes to the awards? Like,
I think it's still patches. I think it's still the patches.
So-
yeah.
we gotta get jackets or something
Yeah.
going.
So that's almost my second point. So my first point is I am now 100% in. I want to be Hall of Fame adjacent.
Right.
I want to go all in and be the redheaded stepchild of the Hall of Fame. Second, once we get in, I want to play it up so ridiculously and obnoxiously that they will then burn the fictitious building to the ground.
That could be
I'm
a
going
thing.
to get me a big old chain or something with HOF.
I have one that you sent me.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
Brandon, what if they got
still have it?
Brandon? What if they got jackets similar
Yeah.
to the NFL Hall of Fame, the football Hall
Yeah,
of Fame?
that's what I'm
What
saying.
if they had
We need
jackets? But Eric's jacket is like a size and a half too small.
Yeah, I'm
Like,
all in.
like it's
Well, you would need it in
it's just,
spandex anyway.
there's nothing you can do to make it fit. Like
No,
it doesn't
I'm
work.
all in. I am all in. I want to be Hall of Fame adjacent. I want to, and I will play it up every single time I am on camera. I will let the world know that I am Hall of Fame adjacent.
Wow. Eric, listen, Brandon, I got to be honest. Eric's kind of selling me on this idea.
So
I'm mostly
I mean,
against it, but he's kind of
I'm
selling me on this
asking
idea.
It's all supposed to be about community and everything else,
Yep.
right? What
Yep.
other
I'm asking
channel?
for votes. I am begging for votes. I want to be Hall of Fame adjacent. I want Carlos in. I want Bobbles in. He can be Hall of Fame adjacent also. We need to get in. So we need your votes. I'm begging for votes. I'm willing to do something stupid on camera to get your vote. I need those votes.
Wow.
We need to get into this Hall of Fame.
What
I can
other
only commit-
channel has been so consistent every Monday, dropping on Tuesday, and it's supposed to be community driven, right? The card community and the community driven.
This is the theory I've heard. Yes.
Every week we have came up with an idea to give the community something to enjoy and participate in as a part of our podcast. Every week, the silly card of the week. And look,
And that's
there's good involvement. Like, we are participating in the community.
So it would seem. That isn't even taking into account the longest running episodic.
Yeah,
Because
this is the only thing I've ever been
Domcast.
consistent in on social media.
It's very true. And
That is
Dom
the damn truth.
and Dom was nice enough to cast a vote today. I did watch that ballot and everything, and he said some nice things about the live stream. But I did have to mention to him that I would appreciate if you would acknowledge the episodic nature. It's not just a live stream; it's an episodic live stream. For hundreds of weeks, it has gone on and on and on for many hours, for hundreds of weeks. But it's also episodic. It's the weekly adventures of Eric and friends. Every week you learn something new.
Do you think there's been an issue of the appreciation because it hasn't been done in seasons?
I think there's an element of that, Brandon. I think the people get used to things. Once they get used to things, they just
Like,
don't
you're
have the
still
full
on season
appreciation.
one. They're waiting for the season finale.
The
of one.
cliffhanger. Well, for our cliffhanger to season one, Eric's literally going to hang off a cliff. Like we're taking the cliffhanger thing literally.
I've done it.
Like we'll just go for it. Look, I gotta say, Brandon, I wasn't sure where this segment was going to go when I started it. With Eric's impassioned points, I'm almost, you know what? Fuck it, vote for me. I
Let's
originally
go
said
all
don't
in.
vote for me.
Let's
I
go
don't
all
care
in.
if you do or you don't. But you know what? Based on Eric's points, I'm saying, you know what? Fuck it. Vote for me.
Hey,
Not only
but
am I
wait.
the longest running episodic, go ahead.
But we can't just sit here and pander for us because we got to include Bobby Burrell.
The Burrell in the Garage of Knowledge. of
Burrell's
course.
got to be a Hall of Famer. We got to get Brad on there. Brad, Hall of Famer.
Mhm.
Yannick. I mean, all of the guests.
No Frenchies in the Hall of Fame. No, we gotta have
Well, we'll see.
standards.
Well,
But
I'll have to
he's
see.
connected with you without your mail sense and your mailbox.
You personally
your
are connected to
USPO
it.
box to send him his mail. Like, you're connected. Like, yeah, it's everybody. It's all
We gotta draw the
inclusive.
line somewhere and have standards. No Frenchies. No.
I'm not aware of any standards that we
All
have.
inclusive.
The point is that based on this, I'm thinking longest running episodic, whatever it is. I still don't know. The podcast, of course, the silly card of the week. You know, that's critically important to the hobby, and of course, I'm a hobby goat. I'm in the back of a book, and I'm a doctor. So God damn it, like I'm overqualified.
Not real Crumble sponsorship.
Yes. Look, the point is, I am overqualified for this shit. Like beyond
Man.
overqualified. Beyond.
We've had the Hindenburg disaster. I mean, that seems like it was yesterday, but it was like a while ago.
But I'll tell you what, I am willing. So Eric, this is how magnanimous I am. Even as a hobby goat and a doctor, I am this magnanimous. I am willing to do this for everyone.
For the people. For the
For the
community.
people. I am nothing as much as I am a man of peace. I am a man of the people. And I am prepared to give the people this one thing.
Okay.
I will show at least 3 vintage cards on Friday if I secure your vote. So you have between now, this will drop on Tuesday. I demand a rush to the ballot box. I demand videos referencing the appreciation for the longest running episodic, whatever the hell it is. And for that, I shall show thrice vintage. And
At
good
least
ones even.
At least.
Good ones even.
Even?
I know. Brandon, I'm bringing out the big guns.
I need to be Hall of Fame adjacent. That's all I'm saying. I need this in my life now.
Brandon, we're firing up the Mantels. We're firing up the Mickey Mantels.
Ooh,
We're doing it.
We're doing it. I'll have it.
I have my baseball box right there. I know
I'm
there's
ready.
a couple in there.
I'm ready.
Put them in there.
I am
do
like
it.
one mountain bike ride away from death. Okay. I need this on my headstone. Hall of Fame adjacent on my headstone.
Convinced. Sold. Love it. Glorious. Mwah.
87
Chef's kiss.
design with Jackie Robinson.
Goddamn. That's goatly
numbered
right there.
Jackie Robinson with the price tag still on it
Whoa.
from where I bought it at a
Whoa.
card show.
Whoa. It's almost too much.
Oh,
Look,
wait. Bringing back the old school. I mean, like, this is the epitome of vintage. We've even graded a big card that wasn't quite this bad, but was similar.
indeed. Look, guys, this has already been a wild episode. Eric has completely my heart grew 3 sizes and my mind changed on the YouTube Sports Card Hall of Fame based on Eric's impassioned pleas.
Yes.
And not only that, I got to show my fucking tractor card. I'm already in a great mood. I am in a jovial mood as we speak. All right, I'm in rare form. We got Booby R. We got my tractor card. Oh man, like this is getting exciting right now. But we're not done. We're gonna move on from this topic, but we're not done.
Really?
Nope. Nope. I've yet to even warm up, Eric, because we got to talk about the foosballs. We got to talk about a little bit of the footballs. So we had a couple of interesting games this weekend. Some surprising outcomes, let us say. We'll leave Baltimore for last because I want to touch on that in a minute, but we'll leave that for last. However, we did have some interesting outcomes this past weekend. Now let me see here. I want to make sure I pull up everything to get it right in my head and see kind of where we're at. The big one for me, honestly, is I'm not surprised Philadelphia advanced, but again, I wasn't super impressed. I don't really want to spend much time on that, but I'll say, congrats to Philadelphia. We'll see what happens. They're perfectly capable, is the point. I actually think it should have been a little bit more one-sided than it was, but nonetheless, they managed. But I want to touch on Texans Chiefs. Understandable. I watched that a little bit at the end of the CSC. I don't really care about the referee thing. Doesn't bother me. The NFL has been #rigged for a while, so that's not really a major concern of mine. Whatever. I actually want to spend a little more time on the Commanders and the Lions and Eric's personal war against the city of Detroit. So I think that's important. But before I do, I think we need to give a little bit of context. I think some context would be helpful here. Allow me to refresh our memories. Washington, Detroit. Does Detroit burn the ruins? Or
No,
do they win
Detroit-
another week and burn the ruins?
Detroit's going to the Super Bowl.
A few moments later.
3rd and 10. 4-man rush. It's Goff throwing over the middle, and it's picked off Jeremy Chin. And Washington will be going to the NFC Championship for the first time in 33 years.
Yep. Mm-hmm. That's the second year in a row that Eric has personally screwed over Detroit, is all I'm saying. Do you have any, before we continue, Eric, do you have anything you wish to say in your defense?
I've made it clear last night after the game, Detroit owes me money. And until they pay up, this is going to continue to happen.
Or until Eminem shows up and yeah.
Detroit owes me money. All right. I ain't joking around with them anymore. Pay me what you owe me, and then you'll be allowed to win some football games.
That's Eric's current excuse. That's what he's going with. So, Brandon, any thoughts on this outcome? I was surprised, obviously. I think when it comes down to, I don't think Detroit expected to be like, well, we need to score 46 today. I don't think that was in the game plan that they drew up originally.
That was the most shocking game. I mean, the Texans Chiefs, you mentioned it, like that one I think could have went either way. Texas played a hell of a game, but
yeah, look, I don't disagree with, if somebody wants to have a lengthy discussion of the referees, I understand, but at the same time, like the discussion of referees bores me. I get it.
The Eagles Rams, there was a mention that they really think the Rams could have won that had the weather not came in, which is quite possible. I mean, you get blasted with snow like that, it changes the complexity of the game. So maybe
unfortunately, if you play outdoors, that's part of the game too.
So that game, though, I mean, I live right here in just south of DC, and the most amusing thing for me is the amount of people who all of a sudden rekindle their love of the Washington Commanders, and they've been a fan forever, and
since day one.
Yeah, since day one. Like that's been the most fun part, because that team has been nothing but deflated for 20 plus years, and now all of a sudden there's like this influx of we've been here since the beginning, blah blah blah. Some statistics and stuff I've seen of this kid Daniels, and the way that the Commanders have won, like this game was kind of opposite of what I've seen from a lot of them. They would like start slow, maybe get behind, get it together, make some adjustments, come back. He had like that Hail Mary in the one game that was like tipped and caught in the end zone. They won that one. There was like dramatic finishes to a lot of them. Like they almost had to climb back in. This one, they just came out and just punched Detroit and then didn't look back. They just, like, Jared Goff was terrible. Like, he couldn't do anything. The whole, what was the running, like both running backs threw passes. One of them threw a pick. It was like, I don't think Detroit knew what the hell to do. One thing, we mentioned, the Eagles part, it's going to be crazy if they actually win and go to the Super Bowl.
True.
The question will be, if Buffalo makes it, does Washington win again? Because Buffalo had that run, back in the 90s.
Oh, I was hoping you wouldn't. I was hoping you wouldn't run straight to it. So we were joking about it so I did a watch along. Eric joined on the tail end. Paul was joined me for a little bit. Although I'll say I kind of hung out with the chat for a little while, probably for like 45, almost 50 minutes, probably maybe almost close to an hour. But we were just kind of chatting and hanging out. I like doing the watch alongs anyway, so it's fun regardless. But then Paul joined in sometime in the second quarter, and then we hung out for the rest of the game and a little bit of the post game. So it was a good hangout, a good chat. It was thanks to everybody who joined in and participated. It's a little bit better if you're not talking to a void and you get a little bit of feedback, a little bit of response. It makes it a little bit better. But I will say this: we were joking about it, like, for me, I would love Buffalo versus the Commies. The problem is that, as Brandon alluded to, that would be a 1991 Super Bowl rematch. That was the second of the 4 Buffalo Bills Super Bowls. So I'm sitting there like, I would wonder if that would be like, to a Buffalo fan of a certain age, of a certain vintage, I would wonder if you'd be like, no, you didn't bring Joe Gibbs with you, did you? You didn't bring Joe Gibbs? No?
Did you see who was on the sidelines yesterday?
I didn't catch it. I assume Joe Gibbs was there.
Joe Gibbs.
Yeah, all of a sudden, could you imagine though, Eric, if that came to pass that way, and all of a sudden the Buffalo is like, all right, we're all confident, we got into the Super Bowl, we defeated the Chiefs, because this would be a big deal for them. That'd be huge.
That's
defeated the Chiefs,
Super Bowl right there.
And then all of a sudden, on the other side, it's like Jaden Daniels is coming down and everything, and Joe Gibbs is like, I have come to defeat you again. It's like, Joe, no.
Something crazy bringing up Joe Gibbs and everything. It's kind of interesting to see that this team, like, obviously, the Daniels run and everything, but this is, I'm pretty sure, the first year of the new ownership, and they've had this much success out the gate, because people could not stand the previous owner. So that's kind of an interesting take on this whole thing too. I mean, we look at the players and all that stuff, and obviously they're the ones playing the games, and you can talk about coaching and their approach to it, but to have a new ownership and then inject success, that's pretty impressive too. So
there's something to be said for getting rid of like a little bit of dead weight and bringing in a little bit of good vibes. Like, honestly, like, it's silly.
It's a refreshing start.
Yeah, it's silly as it sounds. Let's be clear about this, just so we're all on the same page. Because I will bring the cards into the discussion here in a moment. But let's be clear about this. Washington is playing on the most housiest of house money. Like, there is zero expectation for them to even be here. But getting to the playoffs was not a given. There was no reason to believe they'd do that. They got a rookie quarterback. They had a lot, to your point from earlier, they had a lot of lucky bounces, super lucky bounces. But here's the thing, and this will come into the Baltimore discussion in a couple of minutes. Sometimes I can almost guarantee you, my opinion, I can almost guarantee you that Washington will, if they advance to the Super Bowl, I would be super shocked. But at the same time, like, weird stuff happens. But the point is, because they're running on house money, because they've had so many lucky bounces, my counterpoint to a lot of that, though, is in order to win some of these championships, you have to have lucky bounces. There's very few teams that were able to get by on, like, purely, you didn't have one good bounce go your way. Not one good, like, one piece of good fortune that could have easily gone the other way. I always joke about, Eric's favorite football player of all time, Tom Brady. The point is, one of my favorite segments, like, he's alluded to it as much. So Brad Harlan, he is a Tom Brady fan, almost as much as Eric, but not quite to that same level. The point is that one of his favorite segments was where I did a dissection. I actually went and dissected over a couple of minutes the entirety of Tom Brady's Super Bowl resume, and I tore apart every single flaw in it. And I made an argument that is like, a lot of that credit is not nearly as deserved. Now, you may disagree with me on that. That's fine. The point is, I was able to make a logical, reasonable case. Why? There was this mitigating circumstance, but the point is, in the end, they did win. So even if there are mitigating circumstances, things that could have gone the other way, that's always true. If it's close and it's not a complete blowout, if it's a one-score game, guess what? That means it could have gone the other way. That means if something had bounced a different way, if Marshawn had run the ball and it had gone a different way, Dunkachino, wherever you are, I got you. The point is, that could have gone differently. Or one of the other games could have gone differently. If the Tuck Rule game doesn't happen, they don't even get there. So the point is, like, there's a lot of stuff that could have there's an alternate universe where Tom Brady is 0 for 10. There's another alternate universe where he's 10-0. And there's a bunch of universes where there's somewhere in between. So the point is that sometimes it takes luck. It's not just being a good team. It's not just being prepared. It's not just being in the right place. Sometimes a couple of things have to bounce your way. You could have a flawless game plan and you needed one lucky bounce anyway. Mm-hmm. It happens. So we can look at Washington and say you know what? On paper, there's no reason for them to be here. There's no reason to expect them to advance. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend it's impossible that they could. I am also not going to be shocked if they don't. Not going to be shocked if they get bounced in this round.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles aren't a pushover, but they haven't been looking like the Eagles' strength. You know,
all the teams have shown vulnerability. All the teams remaining have shown some kind of flaw. The question is, it's a rock, paper, scissors question. Who has the right combination to cause the other team to either get off their game plan or not be able to execute on said game plan? So that's just a key piece. Now, one thing I was going to mention, we were originally doing a little bit of fact-finding mission on it. There was a Coach Co. and then Sports Card Investor also followed up on it. There was apparently a Jaden Daniels card, a Prism PSA 10 rookie that sold for a ridiculous amount, and it was $2,475. I was able to find the auction itself. We did double check on Terapeak just to do our diligence. We wanted to make sure, so I'll just show it on the screen there real quick. You know, we're a little dubious, to be honest, we're a little dubious. Why? Because this was an auction, 80 bids. It's weird. I will say that the high bidder on it had over 1,800 feedback. So, and the underbidder to that had 364 feedback. So that seems plausible, but at the same time doesn't make any sense given that you can get this card cheaper in a bunch of other places, including eBay.
It didn't make any sense either that only those two bidders were bidding it after $333.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know. It's weird. It's going to get thrown around, cause hysteria, and
it has. So the point that I'm getting at though is that regardless of that outlier, that's an extreme outlier. I'm not going to give it any more credence. To me, it's a data point you would throw out because it's such an outlier. It's so far out of whack with what reality is. The point though is there's definitely hype. There's definitely massive hype. That part is no doubt. There's definitely been a boost in his cards as a result of this run.
There's a boost in anything Washington football, whether it's Redskins, Washington football, Commanders, whatever. As a reseller, I took the opportunity because I didn't know when they would get, or if they would get eliminated, I guess I should say at this point. And everything that I have listed, that I've dug out, listed, it's sold within 1 to 2 days. Like clothes, shirts, whatever, hoodies, doesn't matter. It's all like that's what I was saying. They're all fans from the beginning, and they're all needing their merch. They're needing their merch to show their fandom. And I actually think it's funny because I think a lot of them are buying the Redskins stuff to make it look like they were fans from the beginning.
Since they what?
You're paying up to get like the older stuff there. So, but anyway, no, it's not just the cards. There is a hysteria around him. I was trying to pull up the statistic because I did find it interesting. I mentioned to Carlos. I will give the boy props. I seen a statistic that said Jaden Daniels already in his career has more games where his team had 0 turnovers and 0 punts. And there was a list of like 5 or 6 quarterbacks, but there was top names like Brady, Joe Montana, Patrick Mahomes, and there was like 2 or 3 other quarterbacks on this list. And he has had more games with no turnovers and no punts than that whole list of top tier guys combined. And I thought that's a pretty damn impressive statistic. Because like just say it was Montana, Brady, and Mahomes. Just say it was those 3, and he had more than those 3 combined. That's impressive. But it was like 5 or 6 really top names. They've had 2 combined in their career, and he's had 3. So, you know, I can't, you know, that was pretty impressive. So
there you go. So we'll come back to it. So in relation to the Chiefs and all that portion of it, we'll come back to it if they do advance, or if they don't, we can discuss it a little bit more on next week's episode. So we'll touch on that one in next week's episode. As I said, for the other games, I didn't want to spend too much time on it. The Commanders one is interesting, although I stand by what I originally said. I understand why they renamed it from the Redskins, and I actually agree with the thought process behind it, even though it kind of became convoluted. I agree with a lot of that premise. However, my personal opinion, I still would have rather they stuck with football team. Eric, football team wins Super Bowl. is a headline that needed to happen in my life.
Yeah.
We were
Yeah.
like, it would have been perfect. I was like, leave it alone. This was our moment.
Yeah,
Football
it's
team
much
wins
better.
Super Bowl.
Yeah, it just sounds better. We could have more fun with it, but on a somewhat 5% more mature piece of information, one of the names that were getting thrown around were the Washington Red Tails, and they were
That one
gonna
had a historical relevance.
and
Yes.
I was so excited about that. The logos that were being thrown out there, the history behind the Tuskegee Airmen, I mean, just everything. It would have been awesome.
Was it Red Tails or
Yes.
the one that I kept hearing was Red Wolves?
For the Tuskegee Airmen, it was the Red Tails.
Okay. I know locally, like the word that everybody was really hoping and expected it to be was Red Wolves, is what all the word was. But yeah, they went
And that
with
would have been fine if they came up with Red Wolves and that was their symbol. It pretty, probably would have been pretty cool. But this Commander thing is so stupid. Just like the Cleveland Indians. I mean, they're the Cleveland what now? I mean, just
Guardians.
Guardy. I mean, so stupid.
I
So
still think they should have gone with spiders or baseball team.
Yeah.
Let's
I mean,
go.
I mean, just so stupid. And if we discuss any more of this, it's gonna go into a place that we don't want to go to on the show. So, I'm glad for Washington. I'm glad for their fan base. I really have been a fan since Doug Williams was playing, Mark Rippon was playing. I had Washington Redskin pennants in my bedroom. I had this, for one point of time, and maybe I still do, I had the Sports Illustrated cover with Doug Williams on it after he won, So, I mean, I really was a fan growing up because remember, and I've talked about this and, history will show the Patriots sucked. They were 1-15 consistently. They sucked. And they weren't even on TV because of blackouts. So I had to be a fan of Detroit Lions with Barry Sanders. And I had to be a fan of the 49ers and their dynasty. And I had to be a fan of Washington because those are the games that were being shown every week. And you couldn't see a Patriots game. So I had a lot of enjoyment watching the great teams of the 80s and early 90s because you couldn't watch Patriot games. So I'm glad for Washington that they turned their franchise around. I am glad for Detroit they turned their franchise around. As soon as they pay me the money they owe me, we'll make sure they win. But it's
words.
fun watching
Bold words.
those franchises turn around because I don't think any league should have horrible teams in it. It's not good for any sports league to have teams that suck. Now, not every team's going to win, right? But the thing we like about football is relatively anybody can win any given Sunday, right? That's the saying, any given Sunday. Well,
unless you have a Cleveland Browns quarterback.
No team in the NFL should suck. And there's a few that do, Patriots being one of them right now. Now, it's one thing to be 500, and there's another, to be, only come up with 3 or 4 wins or 1 win. And then you had Detroit a couple of years ago was 0-16.
Mm-hmm.
That's unacceptable.
It worked because look where they are today.
I was gonna say though, like in all honesty though, the Cleveland, as long as they've got Deshaun Watson, it's kind of funny. It's still kind of fun. It's kind of hilarious. I'm not gonna lie. Like I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't want to, So, well, Eric's general point is received, but I want to move on here. But before we go, again, complete neutrality. Go commies. So, We got that one covered. All right, let's touch on the other game, Brandon. It is time. So let me lay the groundwork. Let me set the scene, and then I will hand it off to you. So we had Baltimore taking on Buffalo in what the matchup we were looking forward to the most. That was the one I ended up deciding to do the watch along because I figured, hey, what the hell? I figured it was an opportunity to check it out. And for the most part, the game was reasonable, but mistakes were made. And of course, and you'll be able to give a little more detail because obviously you were watching very closely. I was watching, but also kind of participating with the chat, chatting with Paul and everything else. But I was watching. When it came down to it, so I'll give my take on it really high level. Lamar was not terrible. He definitely made mistakes. There were some bad plays, some plays that I think he would have loved to take back himself. The Mark Andrews is going to be the goat of that sequence because of the two missed two-point conversions, especially the last one. The last one was in a critical moment. There was nobody anywhere near him. Nobody was touching him. He had every opportunity. Like at that moment, he had hands of stone. Like the ball basically just bounced off of his hands, bounced off of his body, and hit the ground. And it was a walk-in. He didn't have to do anything crazy. Didn't have to do anything overly athletic. And that's going to be like the scene that people are going to remember. But along with it, they're also going to remember an interception. They're going to remember a fumble. They're going to remember some Baltimore. And this will be kind of how I set the scene here. Going into this, before this game, I was saying, and I think I said it to Brandon separately, and also I talked about it on the live stream and such. Baltimore had all the components that you want. They had all the pieces in place that in theory you want. Derrick Henry had not his career year, but very close to it. 1,900 plus yards. That was a phenomenal year. Lamar had an MVP caliber season. Maybe he ends up winning the MVP. Maybe he doesn't, but he was right there. Either way, he's right there, right at the top.
Lamar did something no quarterback had ever done in history.
Yeah. So you've got all those pieces in place. And I've explained my theory, I guess I'll call it. But my opinion is that sometimes these teams, and that's in every sport, doesn't matter what it is, you get windows. And the most disappointing thing is when you miss a window. So in this situation, I'll cite the historical, Eric's, on and on again, off again team with his favorite quarterback of all time, Tom Brady. One thing you can give the Patriots credit for is that during that run, they actually opened a couple of windows. It wasn't just one. They actually had two really separate windows. But in the middle, they had contention in it. So the point is they were in the mix a good chunk of the time for 20 years. And they were able to capitalize enough to get to 10 Super Bowls during this period. That's a lot. And they were able to be successful. I think it was 9 or 10, I forget. But either way, it's right up there with it. So they were able to get to a ton of those Super Bowls, get to a lot of AFC championships. And in the end, they were able to still cash in on 6. Regardless, they were able to cash in on 6. But the only way you can cash in on even 1 is you got to get there. It doesn't matter how many times you're close. Andy Reid, until he got to Kansas City, got to all those NFC championships as an Eagles coach, couldn't win the big one. Got to 1 Super Bowl, couldn't win that one. Then he gets to Kansas City, gets Patrick Mahomes, different combination. They've won some championships. We'll get to Kansas City next week. My point that I'm getting at is when you get a window, you got to take advantage of it. I talk about my not so favorite quarterback, the not so a fella is the not so a fella, but at least he was a very entertaining quarterback. But he gave the team opportunity. He gave the team chances to win. They won 1 Super Bowl. They lost 1 Super Bowl in his tenure. But they had multiple chances at the NFC Championship. Aaron Rodgers, the darkness over there, got to even more NFC championships. Got to 1 Super Bowl, won 1 Super Bowl. But when you're consistently in the mix and you're in the NFC Championship over and over and over, and you just can't get over that hump, you have this beautiful, nice long window of contention and possibility. It's actually more aggravating and disappointing to be like, this team should be good enough. They're almost there. Like just, and then opportunities would be missed one after another after another. Eventually you run out of opportunities and the door slams shut on you. Like when the door slams shut, it slams shut hard. New England just experienced that. Right now they're in the middle. The door is slammed shut. The door is slammed shut about as shut as it gets. Could they fix it? Maybe, but it's going to take a little while. It's going to take some effort. It's going to take some really careful planning. To reopen the door is harder than keeping the door open in the first place. It's hard to find that window. Once it's slammed shut, you usually got to go find another window. It's hard. Baltimore's an interesting spot where I don't think they're outside the window, but I'm just saying like this was a primo opportunity. This is like playing golf and having a beautiful drive that lands in the middle of the fairway in position A. Doesn't guarantee anything, but it puts you in a good spot. Like you're in a good situation. So there's the context. That's just offering my opinion. And Brandon, take it away.
So first, I'm gonna say congrats to the Bills. I'm gonna get that out of the way. They won, and see what they can do against Kansas City. A couple points from the game, though. Yes, there were mistakes. The interception, I call that no harm, no foul. No points were scored off of it. I don't know if the ball slipped. It was a very awkward pass. The announcer said they think the pressure coming didn't allow him to read the route that the receiver was going to run. I guess it was like an option route for the receiver, and he had to guess the route, and it wasn't the one the guy chose. Speaking of receivers, I want to mention we played this game without our number one receiver. So that's not an excuse. Next man has to come up. But the Ravens don't have like superstar receivers. We have Zay Flowers, and then our number 2 is Rashad Bateman. So we don't have the luxury. Lamar doesn't have the luxury of having like superstar receivers out there like AJ Brown or, any of the other guys that are in the league. You got Jamar Chase and all them guys that Burrow has, but that's neither here nor there. The turning point for me in the game, and I'm not going to pin this on the refs, but it's a point that I haven't heard mentioned much, and I think this was the turning point. There was a couple of them, but I think this was a big turning point. The third down play that the Buffalo Bills had, and they called pass interference to give them a first down. I think it was inside the red zone. The defender pushed, or the wide receiver pushed the defender off. The defender fell to the ground, and the flag was thrown. Even the referee that they have to give analysis and stuff, they talked to him, and he's like, I didn't see a call. Like, I didn't see pass interference there. So even he said he didn't think it should have been called. But that was a huge turning point because that put the game at 21-10 instead of 17-10 going into halftime. Wasn't obviously out of reach because they were able to come back, but I do think that play could have, look, we lost by 2, right? You change that play, they get a field goal instead of a touchdown. That's the difference in the ball game. The other one, the fumble, that was a terrible snap. I wish that he would have just recovered this, composed himself, recovered the snap, and just went down, I guess. He didn't want to take the loss, and obviously Lamar is always thinking he can create a play. That was one of those times it didn't work. I don't even know how in the hell he lost the ball. It looked like he just dropped it on the ground for some reason. That play was weird. The play that's going to stick out is the 2-point conversion, the dropped pass. It was right in his damn hands, and it's Mark Andrews. And, the guys on ESPN said you could play that game 99 or 100 times, and 99 out of 100 times he's going to catch that pass, right? But the fumble, the Mark Andrews fumble, that was another turning point because that would have put them in Buffalo territory. The guy hadn't fumbled in 7 years, I think, or 5 years, something like that. Mm-hmm. And once again, it was a mishap. The biggest issue, and they kind of reflected on it, I never thought about it. Everybody pins blame on the quarterbacks because they're the ones who the records show up on. It's like a pitcher in baseball, right? You go out there and pitch. If you blow the game or, whatever, it's your fault. Or if the team scores 5 runs, but your team only scores 4, it's your fault because you gave up 5 runs. No matter if there was errors or what have you, you get the loss. And it's the same way with the quarterbacks. Like Mark Andrews isn't getting a loss on his record. Lamar's getting a loss on his record. So overall, I think and Romo said it, the Ravens showed their talent because he said multiple times during that game, they have more margin for error. Don't let, Lamar can get over the interception. He can get over the fumble. They can come back. They have more margin for error than Buffalo did. And they showed that. That game should have been an absolute blowout. Buffalo didn't turn the ball over. I think they only punted once or twice during the whole game. They were stopping Derrick Henry. That was, I thought, the recipe. That, what did he have, 199 yards last time we played him? I thought they were just going to go out there and just feed him, and he was going to have a field day. No, they came out, they were stopping him. So the fact that we even had a chance to tie the damn game at the end shows what that team's capable of, even with all the miscues. There was the Derrick Henry drop pass. I think he had 2 drop passes. Andrews had another drop that wasn't the one at the end. He had multiple drop passes in the game. The fumble, and then, of course, Lamar's miscues. And to still be there. Now, my thoughts on the window, I'm not as worried about that. The reason why is Lamar, yes, this is his 7th season, but he's only 28. He's still young. And they have been a good team. They've been a playoff team, many years now without Derrick Henry. He's never really had a superstar wide receiver. Mark Andrews is question mark now, but he's always been a go-to. But Andrews got hurt the one season, and they still were capable of managing and being a good team. They always seem to have a decent defense, which is, a key in the NFL. So I'm not too worried about the window because they've been able to put players around. Now, obviously, injuries can happen, and that would be a huge blow, but you never know when that's, when that could come about. Like Zay Flowers, he wasn't in the game. Played all season.
Well, the reason though you touched on the key there. There are elements outside of your control. It's not just roster construction. It's not just that. The window concept, just to be clear, isn't just, suddenly Lamar won't be good. No, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is you could have a lot of when you have a player do really good things. So a simple scenario, they run it back next year. They fix certain elements of it. Derrick Henry suddenly ages. Now you lose that component of it, and you have to kind of you can't just replace 1,900 yards. Maybe he's comes back down to earth after all these years. He is not a young running back, and he had an all-world season, not just a good season. He wasn't just good. He was only Saquon 2,000 yards was ahead of him in terms of rushing. That's a weapon. That's an asset you have, but you can't assume you're going to get that level of production. Other elements could pick up for some of it, but you may lose some of it, and that's all it would take to change the dynamic.
The reason I'm not too worried about that though is look at the game last night. The little guy Justice Hill comes in and he's breaking off 10 plus yards of carry. So if Henry doesn't get, if he shows signs of slowing down, then you just don't run him as much as you did. You go with a committee type thing. And they've done that before. I mean, look at the guys they sent to the Chargers, or that went to the Chargers. They were both Ravens, Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. Dobbins obviously was injury, but Gus Edwards was a big piece. Lamar's first MVP came with Mark Ingram in the backfield, so he's had different players constantly. And I don't feel, yes, it's obviously awesome to have Derrick Henry in the backfield. It's awesome, the ability of having that dual threat where you don't know if Lamar's going to run or if Henry's going to run. But the key that actually gave me even less worry about a window is, and again, I don't think this was talked about a ton, Lamar's growth as a passing quarterback. Like what he did passing, 40 plus touchdowns, 4 picks, and over 4,000 yards. That's growth, especially again, when I said he doesn't have a superstar wide receiver. Zay Flowers is good, but I don't look at him as a superstar. So, you take that and you look at, people said all he could do is run, and then he comes out there and puts up over 4,000 yards, 40 plus touchdowns to only 4 interceptions. That gives me confidence that even if Lamar ages, and isn't able or doesn't want to run, he doesn't want to take the body shots and stuff. He's capable of sitting back there. He's comfortable in the pocket now. He trusts his line. And let's not forget, we're sitting here talking about them losing against one of the best teams in the AFC. Week 3, we were talking about if they lost that game, their season was done because they started 0-2. And they had a tough matchup going into week 3. It might have been the Buffalo game. So that's something to look at too, is they started like shit. They could have completely failed and missed the playoffs altogether. And instead, they got knocked out by a team that is one of the best in the AFC. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You're talking about who's MVP, Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. So, I'm not ashamed of losing to a team like that. If it was a bad team, yeah, that would have sucked. But, I said that was going to be a tough game. And it sucks that I think, and I even said it in the Discord afterwards, because it was kind of the fan shock of holy shit, that just happened. We just lost that way. And I think it sucked more because you never want to beat yourself. You want to be beaten by the other team. And I really don't feel like the better team won that game. I think the Ravens cost themselves that game, and it wasn't just Lamar. It was several mistakes that were made throughout the game. So that's the part that hurts, is knowing how good you were, I don't want to be too confident and we'll never know, but I think after watching them week 1, when that offensive line looked absolutely terrible, and knowing that we lost to the Chiefs by a toe in that game, and the Chiefs, I feel, are weaker now than they were then, I was excited to go play Kansas City, but we're not going to have that opportunity because, and Lamar said it too in his interview, you can't make the damn mistakes. You can't turn the ball over. So unfortunately, that's what happened. But I hate to blame it on that, but that damn pass interference call, that had me fired up. Like, I feel like that if it was 17-10 instead of 21-10 going into the half, I just feel like that would have changed a bit of the game. I mean, Buffalo only scored 6 points in the second half. We were moving the ball at will. Yeah, there was another fumble by Andrews and everything, but I just think that play kind of changed a bit of the game right there.
Interesting. So let me kind of angle it then from there, because now we're talking narrative coming out of it. So I'm going to shift it over to the cards. So folks, you were waiting for it. Here it comes. We're going to talk about it. When it comes to football, the focus is always on the quarterbacks. A lot of it really is on those guys. But one thing that's interesting to me is that when you talk about the cards and the quarterbacks, you see, if you ever check out any of the charts, go look at any of them that you want. There's a lot of ebbs and flows, ups and downs and everything. Jared Goff's right now looks like a stock market ticker. It's not a lot of this, but he's been mostly down up until he got to Detroit. Then it bumped up. But then at the same time, now they've crashed back down because the confidence level will not be there, because Goff got to one Super Bowl with the Rams, but then he was replaced, and the guy that replaced him, Stafford, won the Super Bowl with the Rams, which is not a great look. But then Detroit looked really good. So then, maybe this is a win-win. Goff with Detroit is looking pretty good. Stafford with the Rams is looking pretty good. And he won a championship. That's not bad, Eric. That seems pretty decent for both guys. They ended up in what seems to be better situations for both of them. Both teams were in the playoffs this year. So it's not like either guy had too much issue. But Stafford does have a ring. So he does hold that over on Goff. Lamar, though, is interesting because that's the 2018 rookie class. That was a year that I was actually opening some of the football cards. The very first video on the channel was a 2018 product that I opened. I opened a couple of different 2018 products, including a box of 2018 Prism, which included that rookie class with Baker and Lamar and the two Joshes, Josh Allen and the Chosen Rosen, personal favorite of the channel. But you've had all that, and you had Lamar in there as well, and that was all part and parcel of it. And Sam Darnold, of course, which ironically also in the playoffs. So there you go. So Baker, Darnold, and Lamar were all in the playoffs, and they were all in that set. Pretty good. And Josh Allen is still in the mix right now as we speak. So pretty good for that rookie class. Not bad. So anyway, the point is that narratively controls a lot of these things. But what happens is there comes a point in anybody that's a prospect where they'll still hold some value, but then once you've siphoned away enough of the hype, people start to lose hope a little bit. And card folk who are speculating will lose hope faster. If you're a fan of the team, you're going to hang on to it a lot longer because, all right, so what we got to do is retool, we'll fix this, we'll do that, and kind of what Brandon was just talking about. His opinion is with some adjustments, some tweaks, maybe a little bit better luck, they could reload and take another stab at it next year. Hope springs eternal. But for the hashtag investor, they lose their nerve pretty quick. They're going to sit there and be like, we can't take this chance. We're going to move on from it. So my question is, let's assume for the sake of this conversation, Lamar wins his third MVP, which would be really good. That's quite great. That's very good. Hasn't had the playoff success to match it. And I know Brandon is going to bring up a comp that we can talk about. So we'll touch on that in a minute. But the point is, right now he's at the stage of the life cycle where he came out of nowhere because he was a late first round pick. He wasn't one of the top quarterbacks chosen. He was right at the end of the first round. He kind of fell to Baltimore, and Baltimore went for it, and it's turned out well for them. But all the other guys that were the higher picks were the ones that were seen initially to be the greater potential. Then he showed flashes and obviously has won 3 MVPs. Well, 2 MVPs with the possibility of a third. That's really good. The playoff performances have not matched up. He's had some really disastrous playoff performances. This last one, like I said, was far from the worst. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't amazing either. So it was right in that middle ground. So where do things sit right now? Does it feel like, so based on your opinion, Brandon, if the price moved a little bit down, if they kind of gave up on it a little bit and the price shifted down, would that almost be a buying opportunity if you feel that he does still have that capability? And then I'll have a follow-up question. But my initial question is, if they do lose hope a little bit and it brings the price shifting down, does that make it more appealing?
So I'm going to bring this up because I actually, when you mentioned this in the text message, I did a little bit of research to give us some hashtag scholarships here.
Hashtag scholarship time. Love it.
I was an owner, and I'm going to base this off of the Prism base because in 2018, Prism was a different animal than it is today. Silvers were only hobby, but it's a good baseline card. I think it's a card that everybody would go to. It's kind of I would say it's between that and the Optic, you would call that like the flagship or maybe the Donruss. But anyway, I'm going to use this to give some examples. So I would put his price right now on a PSA 10 on the 2018 Prism base, roughly $400. There was a sale today at $450, but there was some previous at $400. And so I would say in an average, he's about $400 on his Prism base. Now, I want to note that card at one time was $3,800. That was during the pandemic, the boom, the hype, all of that. I actually owned an SGC 10 copy of that and was right on my channel and said there is zero reason this card should be worth this much. That was back then, and I did sell my copy. Did very well on that. But for comparison's sake, all right, last year, I'm going to use last year because they made the AFC Conference Championship game against the Chiefs, okay? The card in 2024, and I have January pulled up here, and January 21st, it was selling at $375, January 23rd, $399, another one on January 23rd at $399. So to get my drift, it was trading at around $400, roughly the same exact price as it is today. Last year, AFC Championship. This year, they fall to the Bills one game before playing the Chiefs in the AFC Championship. Let's fast forward a couple weeks, though, because I was curious. How quickly did things change? So they lost to the Chiefs on January 28th, 2024. I pulled up the middle of February. February 18th, $229.99. Going further, let's see. There was like some right around 200, 203. There was a 183, which was an auction if you want to discount that. But you can go on, like it started settling right around that 200, 225 mark. March. Well, that was March 24th. That's roughly a month later, or I guess 2 months later. It was sitting at 205. Okay, he had 2 MVPs at that point, 2 MVPs, and it dropped nearly 50%. I don't think getting a third MVP is going to matter because if you have multiple MVPs, you're likely a lock for the Hall of Fame anyway. And I think this card's going to ride the same wave. I think in a month or so, we're going to see it right back in that probably 250 range, 250, 225 range. And if you are a Raven or Lamar fan or whatever, I would not buy one right now. I would wait. And if you want to get one, give it a few weeks and it'll be on clearance. It'll have the playoff hype. The Super Bowl will be over with. Football, people will rush over to baseball, maybe basketball playoffs. I don't remember when they exactly start up. I think they're more towards June or something, maybe. I can't remember exactly, but the attention will shift away from football. He'll have been out of the playoffs for a month or so. People won't be buying him, and they'll start dipping back down. So my thoughts on it, the data right there shows what happened last year. It's similar situation. He had a great season. He had MVP last year, got booted out of the playoffs, and the card went down. So I expect the same results.
Well, the card going down is what I'm expecting as well. The reason that I'm posing the question is that I'm wondering if it's one of those things. To your point, it can shoot back up, and then when the new season's on the verge of starting, optimism can reign, and some of these get a bump and all that. My point is that sometimes if the audience doesn't feel like, remember, I'm making a separation. A collector's a collector. A collector is not necessarily trying to time the market to buy at the optimal time to get the best possible price. They might still be interested in getting the best possible price, but they're not going to be sitting there worried if, oh man, I overpaid by $5. Or,
No.
So they're not going to lose their mind over it. Yeah.
It's like that Ruby's Robertson I bought off Wes, and then I went and looked. There was one that sold like way cheap, and I just laughed, and I was like, I hope Wes got that one.
Yeah, the one I'm thinking about is I'm thinking about the segment of the folks that are holding those cards that had intended to move it at some point, and they were kind of sitting there, and the last couple of seasons have not turned out necessarily the way they wanted. To your point, I don't think a third MVP helps him that much. Like I don't think it does anything. It's kind of baked in at this point. It'd be nice to have. It's good hardware. Like it doesn't hurt. It's not a bad thing, but I don't think it helps. The perception of, so is he going to get over the hump? Because now, no matter what, in order for him to get over the hump, you got to wait almost a calendar year. It's not going to be, even the beginning of the football season doesn't matter. If they have a great regular season, that's still irrelevant. That's not going to make any difference to anybody. You're still waiting to see if you can get over that. Can you beat the Chiefs in that scenario? Can you get that one extra step to get to a Super Bowl? And then can you convert from there?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't even think. See, the football and the prices and the investors or whatever you want to call them in it, they're so fickle because I don't even know that Mahomes winning a three-peat is going to send his stuff in an outrage. It's almost like they go to the newest shiny toy. And we just talked about Jaden Daniels. If Jaden Daniels wins the Super Bowl, you're going to see people go ape shit on prices. Like his stuff will go to the moon, and then people will cry in a year or so, realizing how much money they spent on a card that went down because the next new shiny toy is going to come out that they want to prospect on. I don't know that even winning a Super Bowl will help Lamar Jackson's prices like go up. I think it's just this wave that these players go. I mean, Mahomes has multiple Super Bowls, multiple Super Bowl MVPs, and even his stuff like doesn't stabilize. I don't know that a three-peat will push the needle on his that much because it's kind of baked in there. He's Patrick Mahomes. So I really don't. I think his play has been, he's been good. And it's helped his values throughout his career. He's an exciting player to watch. He's set records. He hasn't won the title, but I don't know that winning a Super Bowl will make much of a difference. I think the market, air quotes, is just what it is. People like riding the roller coasters. It's whatever catches their attention at that particular time. And I just I don't know that it would move the needle much.
So this is where it gets interesting, and I want to get your take on this one, Eric.
Okay.
So the thought process is, I understand Brandon's point, and I think where it gets a little tricky is this. And here's what I'll throw in there. I do think it would make a difference, and you're using the Mahomes example. And what I want to do on my end, I actually want to see if I can pull up some information. So while we're talking, I'm going to try to see if I can find it. So you'll have to help me out a little bit. But we're talking about Lamar here, the hypothetical. He comes back next year, whether he wins the MVP this year or not. That could be one conversation. But let's say for the sake he does, we believe that it's not necessarily going to help values this year because, at this point he already had his great season. It's kind of baked in. The only thing he could have done that he hadn't already previously done would have been to win a Super Bowl. It didn't happen this year. We think there's going to be a postseason dip as a result now of where he sits currently. That part we're all kind of aligned on. The question is, what happens next? What does next year look like, assuming maybe they do get over the hump? So Brandon is saying he's not sure if... So your argument, for Brandon's argument to work, he's assuming that the current pricing already bakes in a championship into that pricing. So therefore, it wouldn't change much. With Mahomes, in some cases, that has happened. It's reached a point where, like, some championships are baked in. But I do want to make a counter on the Mahomes. Before I do, thoughts on the Lamar piece first. What do you think?
I'm thinking that how much higher can cards go? So if he wins 3 more Super Bowls, how much higher can his cards go? I'm sure that if you got some rookie patch auto of him, it's thousands of dollars. So if he wins 5 Super Bowls, is it going to be $100,000?
Well, the thing is, Eric, the thing is, Mahomes has 3 Super Bowls, and his best patches are already hundreds of thousands of dollars.
But
So Lamar has a lot more room to go up by comparison.
something I want to keep in mind, though, and Eric, you're accustomed to this, being up in Boston. Keep in mind that Brady stuff was not that valuable. Even Super Bowl after Super Bowl after Super Bowl after Super Bowl, until the pandemic hit, until people got rushing into cards, until these big dollar amounts were flashed all over Instagram and everywhere else, Brady stuff was pretty reasonably priced. So I want you to keep that in mind. We are in a different space today.
And where's all his stuff now? With 7 Super Bowls, 10 appearances, Hall of Fame guaranteed. His stuff is all gone, is dropped like a stone.
It's dropped like a stone compared to the apex. Compared to after his first Super Bowl, it's up like 1,000x.
So I'm just saying, like, how much more expensive can things get? I mean, Lamar.
Well, Eric, that's why I literally answered your question the way I did. I said compared to the pandemic fueled all of it, absolute apex, down absolutely. Compared to after his first Super Bowl win, up 1,000x, 5,000x, like a lot. Still a lot.
I guess the other thing is that we're not selling the stuff at the shop like we used to. We used to not be able to keep any Tom Brady stuff in stock for years and years and years. And as soon as he retired for the second time, and it was clear that he was done, we have autographed footballs laying around. We have autographed cards. We have graded cards. We have patch cards, jersey cards, rookie cards. They're just sitting there. So, everyone's going to compare cards and players to him. He's the most successful in that position. I just wonder how, if Lamar keeps playing well for a few more years, maybe wins a Super Bowl or 2. I don't know how expensive can his cards actually get compared to where they are right now. How much room is there? I mean, I'm guessing they're just super, super expensive for his best stuff right now.
The thing is, expensive is relative. That's the point that I'm getting at here. It's all relative to where the comparables are. Justin Herbert hasn't won anything. He hasn't won any MVPs, and Justin Herbert's stuff was hundreds of thousands.
So
By
here,
comparison, so we're high.
here's something interesting to do a comparison. All right. So a Brady Bowman Chrome rookie, PSA 10, is roughly $6,500. A Mahomes Prism is up, PSA 10 is up around 5,200. Brady with 7 Super Bowls, Mahomes with 3, 17 years difference. I'm sure there's probably less of the chromes than there are the Prism Mahomes. And yet, comparably, Mahomes is kind of close to Brady prices. So that was kind of my point. Like, you know, I don't know, like, that Mahomes, maybe it's because he just completed his 7th season. You know, he doesn't have the new car scent anymore. People know he's a great quarterback. He, like I said, he set records both rushing and this year passing. You know, winning a title is really the only thing left to put on his resume, and then Hall of Fame. I don't know though that in cards that it's going to move the needle just winning a Super Bowl. I don't think, especially with everything he's already done and as good as he's been, if he was like okay and out of nowhere had a record-breaking season, won an MVP, and then a Super Bowl, sure. But based on what he's accomplished already, I don't know that winning the Super Bowl is going to push it that much. I just, and that's my personal feeling. And I did have something, if he listens, to throw out there that he might find interesting, because I found it interesting. But to our good pal Paul, who is heavy on the Hall of Fame, the legendary, the iconic quarterbacks, I would just like it known for everybody, really, with all of the critiquing that people have given Lamar about making or winning the Super Bowl in his career, or his playoff struggles, as they may be, all of the criticism he's gotten. Let it be known that him and Mr. Peyton Manning, through their 7th seasons in the NFL, both had multiple MVP titles, but they also had the identical same playoff record of 3-5. Let that sink in a second. By the way, Manning had Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, Dallas Clark, Edgerrin James, Dwight Freeney, 3-5 after his 7th season in the NFL.
Because just like Lamar, he
had opponents.
He had like real competition.
Exactly.
You know? And when you had, he was you know, trying to compete with Brady, and Lamar's trying to compete with Mahomes
and Burrow and Allen, and yeah,
there's a lot, you know, which what goes back to what I'm saying earlier, is that the NFL is supposed to be like this. It's supposed to be every given Sunday, and
I've made the comparison in the past that Mahomes and Lamar almost feel like our modern day Brady and Manning, you know, in terms of like comparing them, they're, you know, competing, everything else. And then when I heard that, and I went and verified it, and I was like, holy shit, 7 seasons, 3-5 playoff record.
Yeah.
Now, I think Manning won in his 8th season. I'm not saying Lamar's going to win it next year. I'm not like foreshadowing this. I do also want to say Lamar is younger than Manning was. So he, you know, if that matters with, you know, a couple more years on the age thing.
Much better athlete. Yeah, you know that.
I just thought that was very interesting that he gets critiqued so much about the lack of playoff success. And then you have this guy over here who's a Hall of Famer, considered one of the greatest quarterbacks ever to play the game, multiple MVPs, multiple Super Bowl wins, and through 7 seasons, he had multiple MVPs, but a 3-5 record in the playoffs with a very talented roster around him.
All right. So what I wanted to do was, as we were talking, so thank you for talking through that piece. I wanted to try to pull some information because Patrick Mahomes is the example we're using. So let's use him as an example. He's somebody who actually won an MVP before he won a Super Bowl. So he won an MVP first and then won a Super Bowl after. Not long after, but he still won a Super Bowl after the MVP initially. So I can actually, so I even went through the trouble. This is how much I want to make sure we have hashtag scholarship. I even gave HOF $10 so I could pull the damn chart with the correct dates. Sorry, Hoj isn't getting my money. I'm giving it to HOF, so fuck y'all. All right, we're doing it. All right, so here we go. I actually pulled up the dates so that we could actually get the timeline here correct, and I can expand it as we need to. So I'm actually going to do it. So here we go. All right, so here is Patrick Mahomes. I'm specifically going with his 2017 Prism Silver. It's commonly traded enough, it's common enough and available enough that we can at least compare apples to apples. You could find one on eBay right now. So the point is it's at least out there. This is in a PSA 10 for consistency. This is a chart. This chart goes from September 2019 till February 15, 2020. Why did I pick that? By this point, he's already won that MVP. This has already happened. And this is actually basically the better part, months and months and months before he won his first Super Bowl. The end of this time period is after he had won his first Super Bowl. So he's already been an MVP. His price point at the beginning of this chart is about $900. So average of $825 back in November of 2019. He doesn't win a Super Bowl until February 2nd, 2020. That was the first Super Bowl they won. Eric, what direction is that chart going?
Listen, you're
This is pre-pandemic. We haven't gotten to pandemic yet. This is February 2020. We're about to get there. We haven't gotten there.
Things we're getting though, because I mean,
I understand.
The Acuna
my
surge.
point- My point though
happened before.
Brandon, every single NFL player before the history of the pandemic, when they win an MVP is great. Winning the first Super Bowl does matter. The first Super Bowl matters more than the second, the third, the fourth. And I will actually expand it out to show you the second, third, and fourth, but I'm starting with the first one. The initial thesis was the Super Bowl doesn't matter.
Right.
Well, it does actually. Kind of does.
The first one is the most important, obviously.
Yeah. So this is the first one. Well, in Lamar's case, the next one would be the first one. So it is relevant. It would have some impact. Now, I'm actually going to show you, I'm going to expand it out. I'm going to show you what happens after 2 and 3. Because then from that point, well, already now he's won a Super Bowl. Now it's kind of baked in, right? So I'll expand it out. So here it is over the course of time. Here's the pandemic. Here's your apex. 2021, this is the absolute top of the top. From the top of the top, it's way down. But it was actually much lower than that. And then it came back up because winning additional Super Bowls does actually bolster it a little bit. Post Super Bowl, every single one, if I pull up the date of the specific Super Bowls, after every single one of them, it takes a dip right after the Super Bowl because the people have already been buying it, buy it in the lead up. The physical winning is not actually the apex. The physical winning is the apex is just before that. And then it drops off and then it levels out for a while. And then if you are able to do something else, then it gets another increase. I'll pull up Brady because obviously he's got even more Super Bowls.
And again, who in the hell knows if we'll ever see it happen? I would love to. I just don't know that it'll do the same for Lamar. You're talking about Mahomes, who's got 3. He's on the cusp of 3-peat. He's got multiple Super Bowl MVPs versus a guy that has multiple regular season MVPs, has done everything that he really could except win the Super Bowl. You also have the Kansas City Chiefs, which, keep in mind, they have an inflated fan base because of the whole Swiftie thing and the Kelsey thing. And, there's a difference there. Baltimore, we're Baltimore. Like, most people hate them. So I just don't know. It might go up a little, but I don't think it will move the needle extensively.
Well, so Brandon, ironically, That was actually my point. I actually believe that the only way it would move up exponentially is if the speculators are in. My thesis is that after this most recent run, this one was one of the best teams they had compiled up top to bottom. If they give up and they lose hope, then the speculators won't be in. They will move some of their inventory and get out of it, which will actually bring the price down, I think, below its
I think
previous
it'll
level.
go about half. I think it's going to, like, looking at last year, what happened, and that was the AFC Championship run, you know, and they lost February 28th, like I said, or January 28th, like I said, and it dipped from like around the 400 range to, what did I say, 220-ish, something like that. I think we could see it back in the 200 range. And does it go up the next season? Possibly. I guess that could be dependent upon, any moves on the roster. Does the team build a little bit better? Do people feel like, okay, they built a run? I don't know. Football and the football buyers in general are very wonky. And like we've said, Mahomes can win the Super Bowl and his stuff go down. We've seen that happen. Um, I There's just so many critics of Lamar, and it's fun having him and Mahomes be compared. And then you throw Allen in there and Burrow and all these other guys. Again, it might go up a touch. I would almost say it would go up for a little bit, a touch, and then probably come back down lower than it was before he won the Super Bowl.
That's a possibility. I think that's where it kind of gets into, you're trying to figure out where their heads are at. I'm thinking, like I said, that where he's sitting right now is that it might be in a position where if the speculators get out of it. So if you're a collector, let me separate two things. If you're a collector, this isn't a bad thing. Everything that I'm talking about, my thesis, is not a bad thing for you, actually. If the speculators give up and run away and they just get rid of what they have and dump it, and then the price goes down, you might actually be able to get some nice cards much cheaper. And you would still have a multi-time MVP, and that might be an opportunity.
I actually had intended to purchase one when they were raw back down to around $50, and I forgot about it, and they went back up. So I would be fine with it because I wouldn't mind buying another copy. I owned a copy of it. Let's look at another quarterback that won a Super Bowl, and I missed the boat on him. He wasn't even on my radar to buy, but I started building out a Super Bowl autograph list. But Joe Flacco.
I was literally about to ask if we were talking about the Wacko one. Are we going to Wacko for Flacco?
He won a Super Bowl MVP, and his stuff was very cheap. And then he goes out of nowhere and takes Cleveland and gives them hope, and his stuff surges through the freaking roof. Like, his stuff, I think, had higher gains taking Cleveland to the playoffs than he did winning a Super Bowl with Baltimore and winning the Super Bowl MVP. That's how crazy things are today versus back then. The reactionary shifts, I guess, is the best way to say it.
Simply madness, man. Simply madness. Okay, so let me see here if I can do this.
Which, by the way, people still think he's worth a hell of a lot more than he was before. So,
well, listen, after all the pumping that was happening out there, some Bobbles and ball cards guy was like all over this dude. He was pushing the hell out of it, man.
I'm trying to let the air out now because I have been hunting again, but Jesus. They're
all of a sudden he's like, I gotta deflate
this,
guys. I gotta deflate this. It's like, sure you do, buddy. Sure you do. I want to basically have a little bit of fun. I want to grab a good one here. See if I can grab this. Let me try this here. See if I can do that. Looks like they haven't recorded too much. Can I open it up in charts? Let's see if I can find this.
I'll see if I can
find it. What was that?
Here's a fun one with the Jaden Daniels hype. And since we're on the topic of cards,
Go ahead.
If he
The
wins the Super Bowl, where, how high, and let's call him, let's say he's around 600 to 800 right now on his base Prism PSA 10, and we know there's a lot of them going to be out there. How high do you think it goes? And then opposite question, if they get knocked out this coming week, how quickly does it go down?
Well, the going down, if he gets knocked out quickly, that's going to be super fast. Like it's going to be lightning how quick it goes. But I think the key with these players, so maybe as a general thought, with any of these players, doesn't matter which one it is, doesn't matter whether we pull up a chart or don't pull up a chart, what I'm fairly confident in consistently over time is that a player, how high or how much they go up or down is dependent on, and we can have a bigger conversation about this later, is based on expectation. The problem with the current marketplace, and this is Jaden Daniels and all of them, the problem with the current marketplace is that too many of the players are starting up with a super high expectation based on nothing.
That's where
Mahomes
wax
was
prices and
basically
everything have gone.
Mahomes was basically the last one that was an accident of somebody that rose that high. Because again, we talk about Lamar here. Lamar still has, again, we'll disagree on this. I have the opinion that if he had made it this year with the money that was already in, because some people had paid good money for some Lamar cards already in the past, like there have been some big sales in the past, I think that would have validated it for some folks, locked some folks in to hold longer, thinking, it's an investment. And for some other folks, they would have been willing to pump a little more money into it because there is money for it under the certain circumstances.
You also mentioned, like, today, look at the guys coming right out of the draft and the hype and hysteria that are around them. Lamar was in a unique scenario because, as you mentioned, he was later in he went later in the round, but he came in as a Heisman winner. Like, he had already showed he was a good football player. The issue was nobody thought he could play quarterback in the NFL. Like, many teams are saying you're going to have to play wide receiver or whatever. The Ravens took him. They had Flacco. Obviously, situations occurred. I think Flacco got injured. Lamar got the chance, and then they said, okay, it's Lamar's team. And then, it's been there since. So there wasn't expectations for him because he was drafted under the assumption of a player that wasn't going to be good at quarterback in the NFL, and he was drafted coming in as a backup quarterback. So he was kind of unexpected out the gate, and here we are. I guess, and theoretically, Mahomes was too, because they had Alex Smith and.
Well, the reason I can say the Mahomes one was one of the last ones that qualified for this was because I literally bought Mahomes Donruss, again, not a high-end product, I understand, but I bought his Donruss rookie on ComC. I bought 3 of them for $15 a piece.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. Daniel Jones was more expensive than that when he came out of the blocks. Mac Jones was more expensive than that. Mac Jones had that ridiculous sale, if you remember that one absurd sale that went down like 99.99999% right after. Again, I bought Patrick Mahomes, Donruss rookie, $15. I bought 3 of them. One of them I got graded and it came back a PSA 10. I sold it for $400 US, which was a good price. I think it's still over $1,000 right now. It's gone up. The point is, you could have had it for $15. And by the way, the year I bought it wasn't his rookie year. The year I bought it was the same year he won the MVP, which was before he won the Super Bowl. You could have still bought it in his. Yeah, the year he won the MVP. So cards 2017. I bought it in 2018. So the year he wins the MVP, the same season he's winning the MVP, I was able to purchase it for $15. That was the going rate at that moment. Well, after he wins the MVP, that's no longer the going rate. But then after he wins the Super Bowl, it goes up again. Like it elevated to another tier because it does matter for some. But again, he was starting low. That's the important part. He started low, so he had room. He had ceiling to move up.
In 2018, too, football cards just sat on the shelf in stores because nobody like basketball was the sport everybody was buying and throwing wads of cash at back then, and then it transitioned over to football and speculating on the quarterbacks and everything. So
Yeah, and that's the reason why it was kind
eventually
of
we'll
an
get
interesting
to hockey, Eric, and people will speculate on the hockeys. I don't know when it's going to be outside of Connor Bedard, but eventually one day they'll throw stupid money at hockeys, and then we can have fun with that.
Well, listen, I already know there's one mark in hockey that's already getting pumped. Heard about this Reggie Lemonham guy?
Oh yeah,
Nobody wants those cards. And
those
yet,
are rare. They're hard to find.
I know
I
for a
heard that one
fact.
guy has them all.
I know for a fact that there is someone out there who's paying 14,000% the going market rate.
Yeah, it's like artificial
14,000.
scarcity now.
It is. So here's the card in question, just so we can look at it. Like in same vein, this one's kind of wacky because again, you're starting off with a relatively low price. So because you're starting off with a low price, you can see how quickly it moves up. So check out the beginning of this graph, and then check out how it moves as you go. So the beginning of it is all the way over here, and we're basically in 2018. So right here, we're at the beginning, about 2018, give or take. $11.50. That's in a PSA 10.
Those were the days.
Yep. So now we're a little bit later, which hasn't moved that much. Now here's where you finally start getting increase. So here's about $100. This is in January of 2019. $99 average, give or take. Okay, sure. Hovers around there. It doesn't move too much. Even here, it's like $88 in 2020. Well, now we're up here. This is 2020. So by this point, pandemic started to happen, but at the same time, coincidentally, the guy also wins the Super Bowl. So now you combine the two things, and that's how you wind up here, $2,000 for a Donruss PSA 10. The population right now is about 1,600.
I really wish we could have seen his escalation without the stupidity in the middle, because obviously it wasn't going to correct all the way back down. I mean, remember, there's people that argue cards go to zero, but we know that's not true, right?
And now where he's sitting today, so now this is post Super Bowls, post everything. This is all the way into 2025, post pandemic, post Super Bowls and everything. But he's already got an established resume. $1,000. Still a lot. Like that's still a lot for
not for a Donruss.
And that's the thing. And I sold it probably right around this time frame here, give or take. So right here about 2020, $400. that was about when I sold. You can see it's got a little spike forthcoming that we didn't see coming. And at the time, that was the going rate.
Yeah, things are wild today. I mean, we talk about the pandemic and the like all of that, but I still think that it supports some of today's values because
some of it's already, so I think your point though is that some of it's already baked in. Like there's some folks that paid $1,000 for it where they're not going to move off of it. Now the comp is the comp, and Mahomes is actually kind of stabilized. Here's the thing: him winning or not winning another. So Mahomes is in the situation you're talking about.
He's
him
safe,
winning or not winning another Super Bowl is he's in the 3 Super Bowl club. Like he's already in a good spot. Now, another Super Bowl, a three-peat, would be a nice feather in his cap because it puts him into that. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the territory with the 4 guys, it's basically Terry Bradshaw, Joe Montana, and Eric's favorite. It's basically those guys. So then that would make 4 of them. But he's already ahead of Terry Bradshaw because his other statistics are above him, like MVPs and all that. Like he just has better numbers. Like he's going to be remembered more for that. And Joe Montana is the guy that maybe you're looking at. Well, Joe Montana never had a three-peat. Brady never had a three-peat. And Terry Bradshaw never had a three-peat. That would be something he'd have that the other guys in that club would not have.
I am curious if the three-peat surges him, because then you get into the comparisons cross sport of the likes of Jordan and stuff like that. And I don't know if it'll push the needle, but as bad as I hate to even say this, it would be interesting to see since it's never happened.
I think it's a statistical anomaly. I think the narrative, we always talk about narratives. I think the narrative is big for that because he would. So again, one more Super Bowl, regardless of at any point in his career, one more Super Bowl puts him into a group of 4, a very tight group that puts him ahead of a bunch of other guys who are amazing Hall of Famers. 4 is big. That's a big deal. But then 3 in a row puts him into a little subcategory by himself. It pushes him ahead. Basically, the only person that has a resume that can argue with it is basically Brady, just because of additional rings. The additional rings are the only he moves ahead of Joe Montana because he's got all the other things going for him, but Montana never got the three-peat. And he had a chance. Montana had 2 in a row as part of his run. And Brady had 2 in a row as part of his run. And I think, I could be mistaken, I think the Steelers might have had a repeat in there somewhere in the 70s. I'm not sure. Regardless, they won 4 in the 70s. So there's a good chance they had at least one repeat championship. But nobody else has done it. It's never happened. You know, the Packers won the first 2 Super Bowl. Nobody has won 3 in a row in the Super Bowl era. A couple of teams have had a shot. You know, if Marshawn had run the ball, maybe Seattle could have taken a crack at it, but it didn't happen. So
yeah, imagine if it's Washington and Kansas City and Daniels steals the three-peat from Mahomes.
That would be a big story. So that would be a situation, Brandon, where it doesn't hurt Mahomes because him just getting to another Super Bowl is really strong for him. So regardless, it's because I think Kansas City, I don't know if Mahomes has been involved in all of them, but Kansas City has made it to 7 straight AFC championships. That's a very good stat.
I actually think they said something, and I could be wrong on this. I think they made it ever since his first season that he took over as starting quarterback.
That would make sense. Which, by the way, that's tremendous. That's really good. On top of everything else, that's really good. It means you're always in the mix. You've always got a shot. But so on top of that, you add that, and there was the one year he didn't go to the Super Bowl because they lost to the Patriots, and you know they barely lost to the Patriots because there was that penalty. There was a penalty that they had a critical moment that could have that turned the tide there. So it could have been one more. I think it would have been interesting if he had beaten Brady in one of those 2. He had two chances to beat him. If he had beat him either in the Super Bowl or beat him in the year, because correct me if I'm wrong on this one, Eric, I think the year that the Patriots beat the Chiefs was the same year they played the Rams in what might be the worst Super Bowl ever.
Yeah. Yeah. It was,
didn't he win one? I thought one of the Super Bowls was against Brady, but it was Buccaneers. Brady.
No, I think he lost to Brady in the Tampa one. Because Brady beat him in a Super Bowl as well. Yeah, there's 2 playoff games that he played against Brady, and Brady beat him in both. One was the holding call, and I think, I could be mistaken, can double check who Tampa played when Brady was there for that Super Bowl, and I think it was Kansas City.
Yeah, it was San Francisco. San Francisco twice is when they won.
Yeah. And then who was the opponent for the Tampa Bay Super Bowl?
Trying to see.
Yeah. But I think that's right. So regardless, though.
Because it's NFC versus AFC, and that's the only way they could have played each other.
Yeah. The other one was when they played in the AFC Championship. But for the Super Bowl one, I think it was the Tampa Bay. And I think they did play. So that's the one where Mahomes had a chance to go over him. That would have been a shot.
I thought for some reason he beat San Francisco twice.
Yes, that one definitely happened. Yep, here we go. 31-9. Tampa Bay over Kansas City Chiefs. So really, but imagine if one of those wins Mahomes had been over Brady. That would have given him a little feather in his cap in that comparison, between the 2. They didn't get to play enough, though. I would have liked to see them play a couple more times because now Kansas City is kind of a well-oiled machine in terms of what they do. They're a lot smarter. Brady was still savvy enough to be able to capitalize on some mistakes they still made.
Yeah, I mean, he couldn't beat 44-year-old Brady.
They got their ass whipped in that Super Bowl.
The Super Bowl, yeah. But if you watch that playoff, that Tampa Bay team was not that good. They were not as good. That was the only butt whooping they gave to anybody in that playoff run. Everybody else they scraped by.
And their last 2 Super Bowls, they only won by 3 each game. So
yeah, and right there, the margin, like with a lot of these quarterbacks, even the guys who win multiple Super Bowls, the margin oftentimes is this. That's the reason why at the time it happened, I laughed because I go, all these years I slagged Tom Brady for barely being able to beat anybody in a Super Bowl. and freaking Mahomes gives him the only blowout of his career. The rest of them are all one possession games, all of them.
Yeah.
Go look at all of them.
Oh,
And
yeah.
again, that LA Rams one, that LA Rams one was an embarrassment. That was an abomination against the Lord. That was an offensive to my eyeballs. And I avoided that one like the plague. I know this game's going to suck. It was terrible. I think it was like 16-13. It was trash.
Yeah, it wasn't very exciting.
Yeah, not very good. But Goff was on the wrong side of that one. Our boy Goff. So he's had the struggles are real, Eric. The struggles are real. So anyway, all right. So we've had that conversation. We'll come back around to it. We'll make some predictions and everything coming forward. But my point is, we'll see. I looked at some of those charts and I think some of them are interesting. I'd like, if any of you would like to chime in, I'd like to get your opinion. Again, it's hypothetical.
I will say this as a caveat.
Go ahead.
Since we were talking playoffs and movement and everything.
Yeah.
If the Bills beat the Chiefs this week, Josh Allen prices will go up.
I think. Well, yeah. He's
Even
in
if he doesn't win the Super Bowl, if he beats the Chiefs and makes it, his prices will go up.
Right now, he's got an upward. Right now, he is in that position where he's got room. He's got an upward trajectory because they have not been able to beat the Chiefs. For them, that would be huge, and it would give between the conference championship games and the Super Bowl, you've got a 2-week hype cycle. That's why I say this stuff's important because the 2-week hype cycle allows you to build the narrative. It allows you to build the story. And for Josh Allen, if they're able to, the whole city of Buffalo would be like, I swear to God, we will build you a statue and make you our God if you can just win one.
I really think the two players, quarterback wise, if like that are in the best seat would be Allen, and God even saying it because he's already so high, but Daniels, because if he wins and goes to Super Bowl, whatever, the Mahomes narrative, if there is a three-peat chance, I do think it could help some just because it's never been done before.
I think the narrative is big. I think the historical side of that narrative is big. I think it helps.
I don't know that Hurts is in a spot, like even if he won the Super Bowl, because he's already won one. I don't know that his would move.
Jalen Hurts wasn't part of that Super Bowl that won.
Oh no, that was Foles.
Yeah, that was
Foles,
all-time great backup.
He made the Super Bowl. Hurts has made.
He did make the Super Bowl. Yes, he made the Super Bowl. Yes,
my bad. My apologies.
That was Brady's best statistical Super Bowl. I mean, he was incredible. His yards,
and he couldn't beat a backup.
Yeah, I mean his yards were insane.
I remember
making
the Super Bowl, and for some reason it registered that was the one they won. But it was Foles that actually won.
Listen, don't try to crown this boy early. Give it to Nick Foles, our boy Nick. I
still don't know that it would move the needle much because he's been there. It might help him a little bit, but
I think so. I'll add this to this. I think it would be more relevant to him if he has an MVP caliber performance. He can't just if they won the Super Bowl and he throws for 140 yards, I don't think it's going to do anything for anybody. I think it's going to be like you're here
more. It might help Saquon more than Hurts.
Well, that's what I'm getting. That's what I'm trying to get at. It's not just look. Style points matter in this situation. Style points do matter because there are Super Bowl winning quarterbacks and no one worries about them. Trent Dilfer was not impacted that strongly. He did win.
Not many people realize Mark Rippon, since we've been talking Washington, was a Super Bowl MVP.
Exactly. but the point is, it's timing. It's right place, right time. Like today, you're not going to sneak past that Super Bowl MVP. A great performance, though, will put you in a certain category. And also, remember, if we're talking about cards, right? Supply, demand, the fan base matters. Mm-hmm. Because if the fan base gets behind you, and they're like, we want to remember this, you're a fan favorite because of this all-time great performance you had. Even if you never do anything else, you'll still get a little bit of plug just because of that, just because of being a fan favorite. It does help.
I think that's part of what's helping Daniels. Washington hasn't had any hope in 20 plus years. I mean, RG3, I think took them to the playoffs, but outside of that, they've really not been anything. And you're giving that team hope. Like I've said, around here, it's definitely hysteria.
Yeah. You know what's the problem with Jaden Daniels, though? And I was just looking at this. I don't know if you've looked. Other than like Prism, obviously. what's his signature card that would be the focus of the boost? Like the Prism is there for sure. You know, there's some
I don't know that he
mosaic
has much
stuff.
out right now.
That's what I'm getting at. I actually think that actually, ironically, might give those an unusual boost for more mid tier. Like a Prism is a Prism, I get it. Like a silver Prism and all that, fine. But that's not tremendously exciting. Like that's not there's no National Treasures RPA to go to the moon. That's not there. As far as I
I
can
don't
tell,
even know
that's
if
not
the
out there.
optics and stuff are out yet. I
Yeah,
don't
so
think
now I'm
any of that's
wondering
out.
if so I'm thinking now that there is not like does he have an RPA of any kind in any brand?
It
I see
wouldn't
Mosaic.
be a sought after one.
The only thing I can see is that I
He has
think
downtowns, he has kabooms, you know, he has that kind of stuff.
Eric,
Eric
the
loves those.
kaboom. Let's go.
Kabooms. Love them kabooms.
Okay. So here we go. Okay. So Brandon, this is it. This is all I got. This is the best I can do. So we got the old kabooms. So let me see here. I'll show it real quick. So here's our last chart for the night. I may as well get my money's worth out of this freaking chart. All right. So here we go. Here's all I got. All right. Back at the beginning of the month, like this isn't much of a data point. There isn't
That's like
much.
a week.
Yeah, like that's all I got, man. I don't know what to tell you. Like this is all the data there is. So anyway, so we're a little under 5,000 to a little over, just under 6,000. So there's already
You're
been a
hearing
boost
that
for
correct,
sure.
Eric. $6,000
Yep.
for a kaboom.
F
Listen,
that.
the PSA 10 population is only 22, and Eric has 21 of them.
Yeah, F that.
Kaboom! Anyway,
And just to touch on Daniels real quick, for anybody, if you want to take any sort of bit of advice out of any of the three of us,
my advice is not to take our advice.
Yeah,
Right, exactly.
One thing that I am very leery on, obviously, I don't think his stuff can hold at what they're currently at.
No.
Even if he wins the Super Bowl, it's a great story, great start to a career, all of that. But people really need to stop and remember he has a rental team around him. Like they band-aided stuck together a team of veterans just like on 1-year deals to put a squad around him. Remember, I mentioned a new ownership and everything. So what does the future hold for him? There's uncertainty there. Sure, he's got Terry McLaurin, but I would not be willing to risk a ton at the hype cycle he's at with a limited amount of availability and uncertainty of the future. So just something to think about there. It's an awesome story. He's having a hell of a year. The team, the fans are hyped and everything. But just realize there's a way, way, way higher chance of it going the opposite direction than up.
Yeah, that's basically where you don't have much of a choice because what I just touched on a moment ago, the fact that there are limited options actually pushes it higher than it would have been otherwise if it had been spread out. So just bear that in mind. That's important. Yeah, Jaden Daniels isn't somebody that I worry about right now with that because you're already really high. Going back to what Eric was talking about earlier, though, for some of these guys, yes, there is room for them to go up because there's an established floor. And if you give somebody something, look, some of these folks with deep pockets, some of the hashtag investors are just looking for an excuse. They don't want to dip their toe anymore unless you give them something. But it's the possibility. The problem is a lot of these teams, if it's a contending team, they have a possibility, but there's a lot of contenders, and most of the contenders are still pretenders. They're just not in that position. They're hovering around. They can get to the playoff round. Justin Herbert was in the playoffs. Didn't help, but he was there, right?
Joe Burrow's made a Super Bowl, and he had an insane statistical season. So,
yeah. So right now, those guys. So the example of what I'm giving, Lamar is in an elevated position because he has hardware. It helps that he actually has some. So it helps his floor. It helps hold up his floor. But the reality is that there's hope of the next step. With Herbert and those guys, there's some guys holding really expensive cards that have either lost or in the process of losing hope. because it's not looking like it's getting better. And the longer it goes, that's a problem for him. Joe Burrow had a great statistical season. They might be able to excuse that away and say, well, fix some stuff, and then if he has a good season again, maybe they can take that step and get back in. So
what
at
will
least you
not
can.
be excused is his frosted tips.
I
And he
feel
bought
like
a
I feel like
Batmobile.
that hurt him. I feel like that hurt him.
Will not be excused.
At least until you get your frosted tips.
Well, yeah, I mean, he stole my idea.
Just sounded a little jealous, is all I'm saying. I had a feeling like you're like, damn it, I was gonna do that.
I tried to
No, I
frost
can't.
my tips and this happened. So
Oh,
Wow. Mhm. Indeed. Well, on that fashion-related bombshell, I think we'll call it a day. So if any of you have listened this far, bless you, because I'm surprised we're still here. But nonetheless, if you
I
made it this
left a
far,
half hour ago.
I would love for you to chime in on a couple of specific things. Chime in on predictions. Chime in on thoughts on where some of these go. Answer the question. I want your opinion on it. Brandon gave his, I gave mine. If in the hypothetical that they run it back next season and Baltimore is able to take that extra leap, Lamar has some success, does that move the needle? And by the way, for the record, winning the Super Bowl is actually not a good thing for some of these guys. That's not the apex. It's the lead up. It's getting to the game and people hoping for the possibility. That's usually where you get your maximum apex.
in full disclosure, in case you're like not familiar, I am a Ravens fan, and so I'm coming at it on my behalf. I don't see it moving the needle much. I have seen the wonky charts as it is. I know how great of a player he is. Winning the Super Bowl is actually become an expectation of him. So if he actually did it, I wouldn't be surprised. There wouldn't be hysteria there. Yes, I would be happy as a fan, but it wouldn't make me want to pay more for him. Now, I also, full disclosure, I have cards of his, so it's not like I would need to rush out and buy one. So
listen, he's still waiting for Wacko for Flacco to come down, and I don't think he's going to. I think
I don't think he
he's
is
firmly
either.
established where he is. He's got a Super Bowl.
he had
does.
the Cleveland bump.
He did.
They
So-
didn't know that good quarterbacks existed. And then all of a sudden, shit hit the fan.
So you guys can give some predictions, some thoughts on that. We had a little bit. Look, we had to pull out the charts. That's how serious it got. It got serious out here, man. But you can do all that, and also remember, listen to what Eric said earlier. Vote for Bobby Orr or the channel or Bobby Orr. Just saying. I'll bring the vintage cards out. I will go get the box. I will go get the box. There's a box. I will go get it. Don't tempt me. Now you all know. And Brandon will find some boxes too, just to make Bobby happy.
I've been
and
putting them
to
in
pander.
boxes.
And to pander. Look, we will pander shamelessly. Eric wants to be Hall of Fame adjacent. It means a lot to him. He doesn't have much going on in his life. Watch Fridays for additional context. He doesn't have a lot going on. Don't do it for us.
Right
Do it for him.
I have a box right here.
I do it for it's like charity. Okay.
It's very much charity. It's 100% charity.
I want to be Hall of Fame adjacent and have purpose in my life. So please vote for
Scott 35 shout out.
vote
Gary
for us.
Carter rookie.
Oh, 75 tops. 75 tops. Classic.
We want to be
Well,
Hall of Famers.
I also appreciate that you put it in the correctly positioned one touches.
Yeah.
That's
we do
important
things right
bonus.
around here. Hashtag
Yeah.
scholarship.
No, those are all messed up, man. You gotta fix that crap.
Indeed. All right, I'm ending the show. That's enough. Episode 112 of the podcast. Thank you for checking it out. More videos coming up on the channel. Friday podcast live streams on Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. See what happens when I have to listen to Eric's sad display. Now I got confused about what day of the week it is. Fridays, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Live stream. Longest running episodic, whatever it is, but it is episodic. I want to emphasize episodic. It's important. That note may be left out of some things. So I want to make sure we emphasize episodic. It is there. There you go. And Eric is YouTube famous in Canada. Well, help him. Help him expand the horizons internationally, except for the Netherlands. More on that on Friday. Anyway, that's it for us. We'll catch you in the next one.